it's like. Welcome to my life.
During interphase, the cell is growing and making proteins necessary for cell functions. During replication, the DNA first unwinds, and then free bases come in and match with the sides of the DNA. Adenine always goes with thymine, and cytosine always goes with guanine. The DNA is a structure with sides made up of sugar and phosphate and the 4 nitrogen bases. The result is 2 identical copies of DNA. This is important because each cell will need its own copy, and the cells need to be exactly the same. During continued growth, DNA is in the form of loosely coiled DNA called chromatin. Important because the RNA still needs to be made so that proteins can be produced. It also has to be loosely coiled so that sections of it can unwind for the RNA to be made. When the RNA is being made, sections of the DNA uncoil and an RNA message moves in and copies that section. The RNA is then sent off to go to the ribosome to code for a specific protein. The organelles must also be duplicated in anticipation of the new cell. In early prophase, the replicated chromosomes coil up into X shapes visible under a light microscope. The nucleolus disappears and the nuclear membrane begins to break down. Spindle fibers, which are tube structures made of protein, also begin to form. They stretch across the cell from the centrioles, which are organelles that organize the spindle fibers, which have migrated to the poles of the cells. During the late prophase, chromosomes attach to spindle fibers at their centromeres. The nuclear membrane also disappears. During metaphase, the spindle fibers pull all the chromosomes into a line across the center of the cell. During anaphase, the spindle fibers begin to shorten, pulling the sister chromatids to the separate sides of the cells. Each sister chromatid is now considered to be a chromosome. During telophase, one complete set of chromosomes is at each end of the cell. The spindle fibers begin to disappear, and the nuclear membrane forms around the new chromosomes, and a nucleolus appears. The result is 2 nuclei in one cell, ready to divide. The final stage is cytokinesis. The cell then separates into 2 identical cells. This happens from the cell membrane pinching together. The cell cycle is now complete, and there are 2 identical sister cells made from one parent cell.
Rise when I gave the word. Now in the morning I sleep alone. Sweep the streets I used to own. I used to roll the dice, feel the fear in my enemy's eyes. Listen as the crowd would sing. Now the old king is dead, long live the king. One minute I held the key, next the walls were closed on me, and I discovered that my castle stand upon pillars of salt and pillars of sand. I hear Jerusalem bells are ringing, Roman cavalry choirs are singing. Be my mirror, my sword and shield, my missionaries in a foreign field. For some reason I can't explain, once you've gone it was never an honest word. That was when I ruled the world. It was the wicked and wild wind, blew down the doors to let me in. Shattered windows and the sound of drums. People couldn't believe what I'd become. And